I took a night shift at an old hospital a few months ago. I'm 34 and have been a nurse for over 10 years. A friend of mine needed help organizing supplies for a renovation project. I didn't think twice about the hospital being closed for a decade. I assumed I could handle it. That first night, I arrived and felt uneasy the moment I walked in. The paint was peeling and the lights flickered. The air felt heavy and the silence was loud. I set up my little station at the main nurse's station and tried to focus on my inventory list. But when the clock struck midnight, I heard faint murmurs. I thought maybe it was the wind. I shook it off, but the feeling of being watched wouldn't leave me. On the second night, it got worse. The whispers seemed closer. I felt cold spots like icy fingers brushing against my skin. They moved past me, and my heart started racing. I reached for a box of supplies and found old patient files scattered on the floor. I didn't remember dropping them. I heard a creaking sound behind me, like someone shifting their weight. I turned around, but no one was there. The third night, shadows danced at the corner of my vision. They wouldn't appear when I looked directly at them. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but the feeling of being not alone grew stronger. I heard faint laughter echoing through the empty ward, but I brushed it aside. Just tired, right? I told myself that. By the fourth night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The whispers were louder, almost like conversations just out of reach. I tried to focus even harder on my work. Then I found more files scattered all around the station. They belonged to patients who died in that hospital. My stomach churned. Why were these here? What was going on? On my fifth night, everything changed. I thought I caught a glimpse of something in the hallway. My breath caught. I called out, but the figure disappeared. I slowly walked toward where I saw it, my heart pounding. Still nothing. I felt like I would explode from the pressure building inside me. The final night, I stood still. I couldn't brush off the feeling that I had to leave. Suddenly, I heard a voice, clear as day, whispering my name. I whipped around, and there was nothing. Just shadows moving along the walls. I'm still not sure what happened. I left that hospital that night and never looked back. What haunts me is whether it was the ghosts of the hospital or if my own memories were at play. Was I truly alone? I don't think I will ever know. I thought about that place for weeks after I left. Images of flickering lights and empty hallways filled my head, keeping me awake. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was unfinished. I tried to push it out of my mind, but my curiosity grew. One afternoon, I decided to do some research. I sat down at my computer, fingers trembling slightly as I typed in the hospital's name. I found a few articles and forums discussing the place. To my surprise, many people claimed to have experienced strange things there, just like I had. They spoke of shadows, voices, and feelings of being watched. It was comforting to know I wasn't the only one who had felt it. Then I found a blog post about a woman named Sarah who had worked at the hospital years before it closed. She described how patients often mentioned seeing things in their rooms, figures moving in the corners of their vision. There were whispers of a shadow man who would roam the halls at night, watching over patients who were nearing the end of their lives. My heart raced as I read through her account. Could this shadow man be what I sensed those nights? I felt a pull to visit again. I needed to confront whatever it was. Maybe I could find answers. One night, I packed a flashlight and drove back. The air grew heavier as I approached the hospital, just like the first time. The moonlight cast eerie shadows across the cracked pavement, and I hesitated for a moment. Once inside, I was struck by how different the place felt in daylight. It looked abandoned but alive in its own way. Dust particles floated in the shafts of light. I walked down the long corridor, my flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. It felt as if the building was holding its breath. I reached the main nurse's station, and my heart sank. The papers were still scattered on the floor, untouched by time. I wondered if the same files were still there. I crouched down to read the names when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing behind me. I froze. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. Silence. My heart raced again, this time pounding so loud I was afraid it would drown out any other sound. I turned slowly, scanning the hallway. Nothing, just the emptiness staring back at me. That's when I saw it again, a flicker of movement down the hall. My chest tightened. I couldn't decide whether to run or follow. I opted to follow, a mix of fear and adrenaline driving me forward. As I approached, I felt the air grow colder. The laughter from my shifts echoed in my mind, followed by that whisper calling my name. I rounded the corner and saw a dark shape standing at the end of the hall. It didn't move. I took a step closer. Then, everything went dark. When consciousness returned, I found myself on the cold, hard floor of the nurse's station. I blinked, trying to clear my foggy vision. Something felt off. The air buzzed with electricity, and a faint echo of distant whispers filled my mind. Ears. I raised my flashlight, but the beam trembled in my grip. "Hello?" I called again, voice shaky. The darkness swallowed the sound, leaving only silence in its wake. I felt a surge of panic. Panic that this was too real, too overwhelming. I stood up, brushing dust off my clothes, and tried to focus. My flashlight flickered, each moment flickering like the thing I'd come to find. There was no sign of the shadow shape. I knew it had to be close, but where? Then I noticed something at the end of the hallway, a soft glow seeping from a door that had been closed before. The door to room 203. As I approached, my heart raced. A nagging sense of dread crept up my spine. I had to know what was inside. The door creaked open, almost as if inviting me in. I stepped through and pointed the flashlight around the room. It looked like a typical hospital room, except for the fact that everything was covered with a thick layer of dust, like no one had taken care of it in years. But then something caught my eye. A small, faded picture frame resting on the bedside table. I picked it up, brushing off the dust. It showed a smiling woman in a white nurse's uniform, surrounded by patients. She looked familiar. Beneath the image was a name, the same name from the blog I had read, Sarah. Why would her picture be here? I murmured to myself. Before I could ponder it further, I felt a chill behind me. I whipped around, the flashlight beam shaking wildly. Standing in the doorway was the very shape I had seen earlier, dark and tall. It almost blended with the shadows around it. My breath caught in my throat. "Who are you?" I stammered, fear gripping my insides. The shape didn't move, but I could feel its presence growing denser, almost suffocating. The whispers intensified around me, swirling through the air like an anguished serenade. I took a step back, desperately trying to retreat to the safety of the hallway. But then I noticed something. Behind the figure was a dark outline of something else. A bed was pushed against the wall, an oxygen mask dangling from the side. "Help!" A weak voice broke through the whispers. My heart sank. I rushed toward the figure, intent on finding the source of the voice. As I stepped closer, the shadow retreated, but only slightly, still hovering at the edge of my vision. I had to see who it was. "Help!" the voice called again, more insistent this time. The shape seemed to shudder, as if responding to my movement. It wasn't just a shadow. It was something tethered to this place, trapped within its walls. And as I reached the edge of the bed, everything shifted. The room morphed around me, colors blending, walls warping, and for a moment I felt weightless. When the sensation passed, I found myself still standing. But now, in a different room altogether. That's when I knew I had only just begun to scratch the surface of what was really happening here. Something far worse was about to reveal itself, and I was right in the thick of it. I blinked again, trying to find my bearings in the new room. It was smaller, and the light was dim, casting odd shapes against the walls. I held the flashlight steady and scanned my surroundings. A small desk was cluttered with thick dust and old paper, while a plastic chair sat abandoned in the corner, stained and cracked. The air felt thick and stagnant, as if the room hadn't seen life in years. But I couldn't ignore the persistent whisper, the voice demanding help. It seeped through the walls, binding itself to my core and urging me forward. I had to find out where it was coming from. Just beyond the desk, I noticed a short hallway leading to another door. My feet moved instinctively, drawn by the desperation in the voice. The moment I stepped closer, the whisper transformed into a clear plea. "Please help me." I reached for the door handle, hesitating only for a fraction of a second. What could possibly be waiting on the other side? I twisted the knob and pushed it open, revealing a storage room cluttered with old equipment and medical supplies. The fluorescent light flickered, adding to the unnerving atmosphere. In the far corner, a shape lay crumpled on the floor. My heart raced as I rushed over, almost tripping over a disheveled pile of linens. It was a person, unconscious, eyes fluttering. The moment I knelt down beside them, the dark shape appeared again, looming over me, almost as if it were trying to deter me from getting closer. "Get away!" I shouted instinctively. My voice echoed through the small room, creating an eerie back and forth of sound. The shadow seemed to cower, but remained, a menacing reminder of something that was still very much present. I nudged the individual gently, desperate for a response. "Hey, can you hear me?" The figure stirred, a man in a patient gown, his face pale and clammy. He groaned, eyes fluttering open. Relief mixed with dread as I encountered the dark depths of his gaze. "Help me," he rasped, voice barely above a whisper. "What happened?" I asked, gauging his condition. I could hear him breathing, but it was labored. He didn't reply. Instead, he pointed a trembling finger toward the corner of the room. I followed his gesture. Something was there. A piece of paper crumpled on the floor, half hidden under a chair. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against the brittle edge. As I unfolded it, my stomach dropped. The words were scrawled in uneven handwriting, but the message was all too clear. "Don't trust the shadow. It lies." Before I could process what it meant, the shadows flickered, cascading like ripples across the room. I heard the voice again, closer this time, angrier. "Get out! You don't belong here!" Back at the man, panic rising in my chest. "We need to go!" Just as I stood up, the shadow lunged forward, as if trying to swallow us whole. In that instant, I realized I was about to lose everything. I bolted toward the door, dragging the man with me. The whispers escalated into a deafening roar, urging me to look back. As I hesitated, I saw the shadow reach out with a long, dark arm. Then, everything went dark. I woke up gasping for breath, the air sharp and cold against my skin. My heart raced as I tried to piece together what had just happened. Had it been a nightmare? I lay sprawled on the floor of the storage room, the man beside me still unconscious. Light flickered overhead, and for a moment I feared that the shadow would return. I pushed myself up, my body stiff and sore, scanning the room for any sign of danger. Nothing moved. I dragged my fingers through my hair, trying to calm myself down. "What's wrong with you?" I muttered to myself, then turned to the man. His eyes were still closed, and his skin glistened with sweat. I shook his shoulder gently. "Come on, wake up." He stirred slightly, eyelids twitching. I glanced back toward the door. The dark shape had vanished, but a lingering unease settled in my stomach. "Please," the man murmured, his voice faint. "Help me." "I'm trying," I replied, more to myself than him. "But I need you to wake up first." His eyes finally fluttered open, wide and wild, as if he were seeing me for the first time. "Get out!" he gasped, his breathing growing erratic. "It knows you're here." "What do you mean?" I pressed, frustration bubbling. "What is happening?" He struggled to sit up, gripping his head in both hands. "The shadow, it's not just a shadow. It feeds. It wants us." I swallowed hard, the gravity of his words sinking in. The whispers from before resumed, stirring around me like a cold wind. They urged me to leave, to escape. But I couldn't abandon this man, not now. "I can't just leave you here. We need to find an exit." I helped him to his feet, his legs trembling beneath him. "Do you know the way out?" He nodded slowly, his gaze focused on a door at the far end of the room, opposite to where we had entered. "This way, but we have to hurry. It won't wait long." We moved as quickly as we could, footsteps cautious against the hard floor. The whispers got louder, more insistent. I could feel the shadows stretching toward us from every corner, hungry and alive. When we reached the door, I hesitated. The man shoved it open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling upward, lit only by sporadic overhead lights. "After you," he urged, putting a shaky hand on my back. As I ascended the stairs, something scraped against my thoughts. A name flickered behind. Eyes, yet I could not grasp it. Just as I reached the top, a sudden crash echoed through the room below us. I turned to see the shadow reforming, its presence solidifying with every heartbeat. "Go!" I shouted, feeling a surge of adrenaline. But as I swept through the door at the top of the stairs, anticipation coiled tightly in my gut. What awaited us in this new space? I gasped, my breath catching in my throat. That was when I saw it. A mirror stood against the wall, reflecting not my face, but something dark and twisted lurking just behind me. The reflection in the mirror wasn't my own. It was a grotesque version of me, eyes sunken and features distorted, like a funhouse mirror come to life. I staggered back, my heart pounding. "What the hell?" I gasped, feeling a chill creep up my spine. The man behind me stiffened, his breath hitching as he tried to comprehend what we were seeing. "Don't look at it," he shouted, voice rising with urgency. "It can trap you. We need to move." I tore my gaze away from the glass, but the memory of that reflection clung to my mind like shadows in a dim light, unsettling and impossible to shake off. I turned toward the man, who scanned the room with fear pulsating through his body. "What do we do?" I asked, desperate. "We need to find the exit," he replied, gritting his teeth against the panic. "There should be a window. Follow me." The hallway stretched out before us, dimly lit with flickering lights. The air was thick with tension. Every step felt amplified, the sound echoing like thunder in my ears. I felt as if we were being hunted. We stumbled forward, searching for any signs of a way out. Every door we passed was closed tight, but a room to our right caught the man's attention. "In here!" he exclaimed. He shoved the door open, and we stepped inside, only to find it filled with medical equipment and old charts. The scent of antiseptic mixed with something rotten. The man grabbed a nearby chair, pushing it against the door as if it could hold back whatever might pursue us. I glanced around, noticing a large old window at the far end. "We can escape through there," I said, my hope flaring briefly. He nodded, but his eyes darted nervously, tracking the whisperers that seemed to seep through the walls like smoke. "Hurry!"
As I rushed to the window, I found it sealed tight. I pressed against it, trying to push it open, but it wouldn't budge. Panic started to bubble within me. "It's stuck! We can't get out!" "Back away!" he shouted, suddenly fierce. Before I could ask what he meant, he lunged forward and slammed a fist against the glass. The loud crack reverberated through the room, sending a ripple through my heart. I gasped, "Are you crazy? I'd rather face that than—"
"Let it find us here," he snapped. As if summoned by his words, the whispers intensified, crawling through the air until they doused my reason with dread. I caught sight of the mirror across the room, and my reflection, no, that thing, was staring right back at me, its mouth twisting into a cruel smirk. "What's happening?" I stammered, my voice shaky. "We don't have time," he yelled, swinging again. This time, the glass shattered. Pieces exploded outward, glinting like stars, while the air turned frigid. In that moment, I felt a rush of movement behind me. I began, spinning to face the door. But it was too late. A dark figure slithered in, the shadow from below, hungry and grotesque. "We need to go, now!" he shouted again, fear crackling in his voice. But I was frozen, my heart hammering wildly against my ribcage. Just before I turned to act, the whispers hushed, and the room fell silent. Too silent. That was when I heard the voice, deep and echoing, calling my name. Sarah. It was a voice I thought I had buried long ago. Sarah. Everything faded to black. Everything rushed back in, a whirlwind of sound and light. I gasped, my eyes flying open. The man loomed over me, his face a mask of urgency. "Are you okay?" His voice broke through the fog that clung to my mind. Where are we?" I stammered, pushing myself up from the cold floor. The room felt smaller now, everything closer, as if the shadows were reaching out to grab me. "We're still in the hospital." His eyes darted around, scanning for the figure that had slipped inside. "That thing didn't follow us in here, but we can't stay. We need to keep moving." I felt a shiver run through my spine. That voice. It echoed in my mind like a haunting melody. I shook my head to clear my thoughts. "What was that?" I muttered, more to myself than to him. "Just a trick. It finds your fears and whispers them back to you," he replied, gripping my arm tightly. "But if we don't get out, it won't be just whispers." I stumbled to my feet, the debris from the shattered window crunching beneath my shoes. "We need to find a way out. Are there other rooms?" He nodded. "There should be a stairwell down the hall." We moved cautiously, glancing over our shoulders, as if the darkness itself were alive. The hallway loomed before us, stretching into shadows that felt thicker, almost suffocating. The flickering lights cast eerie shapes, making me feel as though dozens of eyes were watching, waiting. I squeezed the man's arm. "What if it comes back? What if it follows us?" He paused, looking me straight in the eyes. "It can't harm you unless you let it. Remember that." I didn't know what he meant, but I nodded anyway. Just then, something caught my eye. A slight movement at the end of the hall. I turned, and there it was again, a shadow, darting just out of view. Anxiety twisted in my stomach. "Did you see that?" I whispered. "Go," he urged, and we sprinted down the corridor, making it to the stairwell door. It was heavy and rusted, but it swung open with a surprising creak. We rushed inside, echoes bouncing off the walls. The stairs spiraled down into darkness. I felt a sudden pull to retreat, but his grip on my hand was firm. "We have to keep going," he said breathlessly. Each step downward brought a tightening in my chest. The air grew colder as we descended. A low hum started vibrating through the walls, an unsettling sound that scraped against my sanity. "What is that?" I breathed, fear crawling back into my throat. "Don't listen to it," he said sharply,
It's trying to break us down. We need to hurry." Then everything shifted. From the corner of my eye, I caught movement again. But this time, it wasn't just a shadow. It was a figure, faint and flickering, hovering at the edge of the light. Not just watching. It felt as if it was waiting for something. I froze. "We have to go back," I gasped, pulling away. "There's something down here, something—" But I barely got the words out before I was pulled off balance by a surge of darkness. Everything started to swirl around me, and I lost my footing. As I fell, the hum crescendoed into a deafening roar, drowning out the cries of the man beside me. Then, darkness enveloped me once more. I jolted awake on a damp floor, the smell of mold and old metal assaulting my senses. My heart raced as I struggled to sit up. The dim light flickered above me, and shadows danced along the walls, twisting into shapes that seemed to stretch and reach. "Hey!" A voice broke the silence, startling me. It was the man from before, kneeling beside me. His face looked etched with worry. "You passed out. I thought we lost you." "What happened?" I asked, shaking my head to clear the lingering haze. "It's here," he said, eyes darting towards the shadows. "We must move now." He pulled me to my feet, his grip steadying me as I wobbled. I noticed we were in a small, cluttered room, filled with old medical equipment covered in dust. I glanced around, a sense of unease tightening my stomach. "Where are we?" "An old storage room, I think. We need to find another way out." He moved to the door, pushing it open slowly, its creak echoing through the hallway. The corridor stretched out again, casting strange silhouettes along the walls. The hum from before was gone, replaced by a heavy silence that felt wrong. It was as if the space held its breath, waiting for something to break the stillness. "What if it comes back?" I whispered, the thought gnawing at me. "I don't know, but we can't stand here,"
he murmured, stepping into the hallway. "Stay close." We advanced cautiously. My heart thudded in my ears, fear bubbling up again. Then I heard it, a soft, almost playful laughter echoing from somewhere behind me. I froze, dread seizing me. "What was that?" I asked, turning back, but the hallway appeared empty. He gripped my arm tighter. "Don't look, just keep moving." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was trailing us, unseen but very present. Each step felt like a mistake, each breath a risk. Suddenly, a door slammed shut down the hall, the sound ripping through the silence like thunder. Adrenaline kicked in. "We need to get out of here now," I gasped. He nodded, urgency etched on his face. We turned a corner and stumbled into another darkened area, this one filled with flickering fluorescent lights. Shadows slithered along the floor, and for a moment I thought I saw a figure lurking just out of sight. Then I saw it, an arm reaching out from the shadow, pale and thin. Before I could scream, it vanished, but I felt an icy breath brush against my neck. I gasped, stepping back into the man. "Did you feel that?" "Keep moving," he shouted, pulling me forward again. Panic surged through me. "This way." He gestured to a door at the end of the hallway. But as we sprinted, something heavy and dark shifted behind us. I risked a look back. The shadow had taken form. A figure, twisted and grotesque, was emerging from the dark. We raced to the door, but it wouldn't budge. "Open! Open!" I screamed, throwing my weight against it. "Hold on," he said, pushing his shoulder against the door. I turned to face the figure, whose eyes glinted with malicious intent. Just as the door creaked open, a chilling voice whispered from the darkness, "Stay with me." With a sudden shove, we burst through the threshold, tumbling into another stifling corridor. I spun around, letting the door slam behind me. But then, in the flickering light, I saw something on the floor, a crumpled piece of paper. When I reached for it, I felt a surge of dread, as if whatever was behind the door was trying to pull me back. That's when I picked it up and realized it was a map of the building, marked with a giant X. My breath caught in my throat as I read the notes scrawled at the bottom. Do not enter. Something waits here. What is it? The man asked, his eyes wide. I think I found something, but I don't know if it'll help us or lead us deeper into the nightmare. And just as I turned to explain, the lights went out completely. Darkness enveloped us like a heavy blanket, and my heart raced again. I fumbled for something, anything to help me see, my hands brushing against the cold, rough wall. Panic clawed at my throat. Stay calm, the man whispered, though I could hear the slight tremble in his. We need to find a light. I nodded, though I could hardly see him beside me. What if it's still here? He didn't answer, only took a tentative step forward. I followed, instinctively placing my hand on the wall to steady myself. We inched forward, the heavy silence pressing down on us, making it hard to breathe. Then I heard it again, the laughter, echoing, taunting. It felt closer this time, swirling around us, filling the space with an unsettling energy. It's playing with us. My voice was barely above a whisper. Keep moving, he hissed, urgency making him sound desperate. I forced my legs to cooperate. The little map felt alive in my pocket, a reminder of escape. But every step felt like a betrayal, to my instincts, to my senses. I felt trapped. Then, without warning, a siren blared, cutting through the darkness and our confusion. The sound vibrated through the halls, flooding everything with an eerie red glow as emergency lights flickered on like angry fireflies. I blinked against the harshness, my eyes struggling to adjust. Over there, he pointed to a nearby doorway. I didn't hesitate this time. We rushed inside, slamming the door shut behind us. We found ourselves in a room cluttered with boxes and old equipment. I could barely make out the outlines of forgotten machines. There was a window, but it was grimy, the view obscured. What now? I panted, glancing around. We need to stay quiet. They might think we're gone, he said, peering out into the hall. I felt sweat pooling at the base of my neck, anxiety slithering in. Who are they? What is this place? But he was lost in thought, scanning the room where shadows had begun to play tricks on us again. I caught sight of the red glow reflecting off something on a table. I approached it carefully, wiping the dust away. It was a journal, old, its pages tattered but mostly intact. This could have answers, I murmured, desperately trying to make sense of it all. He crossed the room to lean over my shoulder, reading aloud the faded script. It's about the experiments, something about them feeding off fear. That sent a chill crawling up my spine. Feeding off fear? What does that even mean? But before he could answer, the door rattled. A slow, deliberate knock echoed from the other side, one that chilled my blood. "Let us in," the voice sang through the door, smooth yet tainted with malice. It took a moment to comprehend the words fully. No, we can't let them in," I breathed. When I turned to the man, I could see his face pale, fear replacing the urgency from moments before. "Hide," he mouthed, eyes darting to the dark corners of the room. As I ducked behind a stack of boxes, I looked around and saw an ominous glint coming from the journal. I could have sworn the voice outside whispered again. "Join us. It's much more fun inside." That's when I noticed another X marked across the pages, this one ominously different than the one on the map. What had we gotten ourselves into? The voice outside continued its insidious song, wrapping itself around my thoughts and sending shivers down my spine. I held my breath, heart pounding, as I pressed my back against the cool surface of the boxes. The whispers slipped in and out of coherence, beckoning us to join them in whatever twisted fate awaited. "Things are different in here," the voice crooned, and I could almost hear a smile curling across its unseen lips.
The man beside me shifted nervously glancing at the entrance. "Stay low. It might not know we're here," he whispered, his face taut. I nodded, though I could barely focus. The journal felt almost alive in my hands, with its strange energy pulsating against my skin. As the voice persisted, coaxing us to reveal ourselves, a chill swept through the air, a pulse of darkness that settled heavily around us. Then, just like that, the laughter poured in once more. It was light, playful, and yet deeply unnerving, like a child playing a game far too serious for my liking. I closed my eyes against the noise, trying to concentrate. I had to see the page that bore the second X. I slid the journal closer, hoping that deciphering its secrets would provide a way out. The brittle pages crackled beneath my fingers as I turned them. The words detailed horrific procedures, experiments on patients, their fears extracted and transformed into nightmarish forms. My stomach twisted as I read snippets of their anguish, the specific references to shadows and voices resonating oddly with what I had experienced. "They feast on despair," I mumbled softly, feeling more uneasy with each revelation. Beside me, the man shifted again. "I think it's getting desperate," he whispered, eyes flitting to the door, the tremble in his voice giving away his fear. Outside, the knocking grew louder, each thud a reminder of the darkness creeping closer. "Let us in," it sang again, slithering under the door. "We just want to play." I gripped the journal harder. "We can't let it in." I struggled to keep my voice steady. There had to be something we could do. "We should break the window," he began, but I silenced him with a hurried glance. Breaking the window could lead to our own demise, crashing us into whatever waited outside. Suddenly, the door rattled once more, with a force that rattled my teeth. "You can trust us," it urged, the tone shifting from seductive to desperate, each syllable laced with a haunting promise. "We're your friends." The man pressed against the wall, eyes wide and frantic. "We can't listen." Just then, the journal felt warm between my fingers, pulsing gently, almost like it was beckoning me. I flipped back to the page containing the first X, and my breath caught. It described a way to seal the shadows away, a counter to the fear they thrived upon. "We have to perform a ritual," I said, heart racing from the implications. "Ritual?" he echoed incredulously, glancing toward the door where the whispers turned desperate, serrated edges of panic threading themselves through the fibrous shadows. "Fear is its weakness, and it feeds on the dark," I insisted, my voice gaining some strength. "If we can channel its fear against it, I don't know how." He pulled at his hair, agitated. "What if it doesn't work? What if we just make it worse?" I locked eyes with him, feeling the weight of our shared dread press against us. "If we don't try, we'll never know." With barely a moment of hesitation, we resolved to act. I began to read the chant from the page, my voice quaking as the words tumbled out, an alien incantation laced with power. "Shadows of despair, hear our plea," I spoke, and the room responded, resonating with the energy of the words. A flicker of doubt sparked within me. Was this a path to freedom, or just another trick? The whispers escalated, anger swirling outside the door, a furious protest to the rising light. "Stop!" the voice wailed, an urgent rasp clawing through the barrier. "You will regret this!" In my chest, the realization dawned that facing the shadows demanded more than fearlessness. It required a deep understanding of my own, and the mysteries of all pain gathered within these walls. "Ritual complete," we continued, emboldened by the sense of power in the words, the man's voice syncing with mine, lending muscle to the chant. The walls trembled, shadows pulsing as if alive. Then, all at once, a deafening crash erupted. The door splintered, revealing a writhing darkness, grotesque and swirling. "Fools!" it screeched, But I pressed on, the words taking form in the air, establishing a barrier between us and the shadow creature. As the final syllable resonated upon the air, a scream erupted, primal and raw, escaping the mouth of the shadow. The darkness writhed against the glowing light that erupted around us. I strained against the force that threatened to consume us whole, the light seeping into every crack. But just as quickly as that, it went black. The light faltered, then vanished. I was left gasping on the floor of a darkened room. Had it worked? The air felt heavy still, yet quiet. "Are you okay?" The man's voice shook me from my daze. "Did we do it?" I gasped, sitting up to find him peering into the shadows. Slowly, a realization began to sink in. There was still the echo of whispers, but no longer with the same intensity. They were distant, wavering at the edges. The figure remained cloaked, yet there was a shift in the atmosphere, a lingering uncertainty. I turned to him, searching his face for answers, as he glanced cautiously toward the corner where the darkness seemed to linger. "I don't know, but we're safe, for now," he breathed.
Despite our temporary reprieve, uncertainty hung in the air like a shrouded specter. I could not shake the feeling that our confrontation had only scraped along the surface of something far deeper. Outside, night still held its dominion over the hospital, leaving questions lingering unanswered. As I stood, I felt the pull of that darkness woven deep into my heart. The understanding that whatever malevolence dwelled here was not entirely vanquished. We had survived this encounter, but how many others like us had fallen? I looked back at the once shattered door, now merely ajar, shadows creeping through, twisting into forms only the brave, or the foolish, would dare confront. "I guess we'll have to stay vigilant," I murmured softly, and he nodded grimly in agreement. I couldn't tell if our experiences had unveiled the nature of that insatiable dread, nor if the rituals we performed had truly sealed it away. Some questions haunt us quietly long after the dark slips back. I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, bracing myself, for the echoes still lingered around us, reminding me that the past often wasn't through with us yet.